Hello and welcome to another episode of 9 to 5 Nerds with Robert Swathwood and Katrina Swathwood.
Hello.
Off air, we've kind of talked in the past about doing a new segment on here, and I'm kind of pitching it on here to see what people think. I know that Alan and I have talked about it, and you and I have talked about it, about doing and this is going to go into what we were... what we watched and all that. But we've all had those movies we know we've seen, but we don't remember them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there's movies that I know I've seen 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, and I'm aware that I've seen it, and I can't remember a thing about it. And I think it would be kind of fun to do an episode where we focused on a movie and we did like a third of an episode before we watch it and talk about what we think it's about, what we think happens, and all the stuff that goes on in the movie, and then actually watch the movie and talk about it afterwards and see how accurate
our memory
is and things like that. And to be fair, I started writing these movies down somewhere, and I can't remember where I put it. They're somewhere, maybe in my phone. I put a lot of notes in there for podcast episodes and things like that. But can you think of a movie, besides the one we're going to talk about, that you know you've seen, but
Yes.
you can't really remember it? You can.
American Werewolf in London.
Okay. So
I saw that when I was such a young kid.
Yeah.
And I kind of know what happens, but I couldn't tell you the plot of the entire movie to save my life.
See, I think that would be fun. I think that's something out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's something out there that there isn't a podcast because it's so specific. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's such a specific thing because...
And that's also taking the time to rewatch something that you've already watched when there's so much other content.
But does it count as having watched it if you don't remember a single thing about it?
Like, I also saw The Doors and I was like super tiny, and I probably couldn't tell you besides the main character what's going on in there.
I know that I've seen all of Almost Famous, and I know I watched it in one sitting. But other than a few snippets of that movie, I couldn't tell you much about it. I know the kids from...
A writer.
Yeah, so I don't want to talk about it in case if we do something like that. So
that would be fun. Like, that you'd have to go back and it can't be something so involved in your brain, like when you watch movies when you're a kid, like all the time.
Yeah, it's not like for you, I know it was Pinocchio.
I watch that all the time. I watch Ferngully all the time.
I can't think of a movie I watched over and over and over again as a kid. I don't think I had one.
I had just Disney movies on rotation.
Yeah. I can't think of one.
Like, I saw Goodfellas so many times over so many different years that I know what that movie is.
Yeah, of
and
course,
what happens.
of course. And I mean, I know as I was older, I watched movies over and over and over again. But as a kid, I'm trying to think. I don't think there was a movie that I watched a ton of times. But, that leads us into what we watched this last week. You just changed the fucking podcast called What We Watched This Week. I'm sure that's already a podcast.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. It's probably a really good one, too. But we watched Dr. Sleep. And that is a sequel to The Shining, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
it happens after.
I know that I've seen The Shining, and I know that I've seen it more than once.
Me too.
However, watching this, I'm like,
I'm missing something here.
Yeah.
I'm missing a key point of this plot.
And I don't know if that's, Dr. Sleep elaborated on
what was going on.
And now you have, we'll dive into the heroes and villains of the story and situations like that. And I don't know if this just elaborated on some things that were kind of under the surface in The Shining, but minus bullet points, I don't really remember The Shining all that well.
Like, I remember them going to the hotel. I remember Danny running around outside, the creepy girls, because I think everybody knows the creepy girls.
I mean, Dr. Sleep had to do with more, not demons, but, I didn't... It has to do with these immortal /
They're not immortal.
No.
They can die. They have to eat people's souls.
Terror? Fear? To me, it was they had to feed on their fear.
Okay.
Because they were screaming when...
Yeah.
So these... they're not immortal. They're not... I guess fear hunters. I mean...
Fear eaters.
Yeah, you could say... but I don't remember any of that from The Shining.
I don't either. I remember them trying to get him to, like, Danny to go places.
So I
don't know if they were trying to lure him to then... And then there's the possibility of them turning people into these things.
Yeah, strong ones, it seemed like, that they would
They
use.
had abilities.
Yeah. Well, I think all of them have ability. The Shining. They all have... That's what Danny called in Dr. Sleep, his Shining. Right. They all have something that makes them extraordinary. In
some people, it's more stronger than others.
Yeah, and the one that they turned, she could force people or tell people what to do.
They called her a pusher.
Yeah, and there was a baseball player, a child that seemed to be, he knew what was coming. You know, they talked about how he knew what every pitch was coming. So, I mean, premonition.
Foresight.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure, but I felt like watching this movie, I need to go back and watch The Shining. And then I don't remember it enough to say that, you know, that stuff was subtle or not as in your face as it was in Dr. Sleep, or maybe they didn't do it at all and this is just elaborating on the story. I really don't know.
Well, The Shining kind of borders on the line of a horror movie.
And this didn't?
Yeah, I think it was more scary than horror.
Isn't
there was some
scary as horror?
Not necessarily.
What?
No?
I mean, there'd be scary moments in a non-horror movie, but Dr. Sleep is absolutely a horror movie.
Okay. It was pretty brutal.
I mean, Hush wasn't a slasher
No,
scary
it was a thriller.
movie, but that's still in the genre of horror.
Okay.
I think you have a broader umbrella of horror,
and it bleeds into other genres.
Well, that under that umbrella is thriller, slasher, jump scare. You know, I feel like there's a lot of things, supernatural, and I think that's what this more would fall under. It's like a supernatural type thing, but I still think that falls under the umbrella of horror. It might not be terror or gore or anything like that, but I still think it falls under the umbrella of horror.
Okay.
That's a different thing to break down and
it's not a drama.
Tear apart. No,
it's not a
all.
comedy. For sure.
But I really enjoyed the movie a lot. I really liked it. It makes me want to go back and watch The Shining, which refreshed that idea for the podcast in my mind. But I know Ewan McGregor is kind of hit or miss. Like, I mean, you see like Trainspotting, and he's so good in Trainspotting.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he's Obi-Wan, but you have him, he's really hit or miss. You know what? Maybe he's more hit than miss, because I really like Big Fish. I really like, he's fine as Obi-Wan. I really like
Birds of Prey, right?
Birds of Prey he was good in. I mean, he's typically pretty good. And
I think he's underrated.
Well, I think it's because his name is attached to he's one of the biggest box office flops. Like, there's no return on his name. Like, for every dollar spent, he does. I saw this thing one time that it's per dollar spent what the movie studio gets back in return, and he was like lowest on one of the lower ones on the list.
Is that his fault?
It might be him and his agent's fault for what they choose, but maybe he just doesn't want to do. I mean, I say he doesn't want to do big things, but he's been in a DC thing, which is big, and he's been in Star Wars, which is big. So
huge.
So I don't know, but he was phenomenal in this. I really liked the torment that you could see just in his eyes. Like, he really played the tormented soul very well. And I mean, Trainspotting is an example of him playing
well, you're talking about a child that went through a really excruciatingly tormentuous, experience.
Who is now, a recovering alcoholic in this.
Well, of course he's an alcoholic. He's trying to suppress all those thoughts and
he's self-medicating.
Yeah.
Which is
absolutely
what it is.
With drugs and alcohol.
But yeah, him in on the good aspect, him, I like Cliff Curtis, is that his name? I think it is.
His
guy
guide
from New Zealand.
Oh no, yeah. No, I like him too.
I like him. I liked the girl who played the other, the really strong, who had the really strong Shining. There was this really cool situation where, and I apologize, like I said earlier, I cannot remember The Shining very well.
Abra,
yeah. Was it the cook from The Shining that was helping Danny?
I think so.
Okay, so he's obviously in Danny's head. And he's at pivotal points in Danny's life, and he's there to help him, talk him through. And I found, as the story goes on, you start to realize what Danny's going to have to do.
He's going to have to sacrifice.
Yeah. So I really liked the villains, and we talked about it earlier. The
Rose the Hat. That's her
Rose
name.
the Hat. Yeah, I know. I saw. I looked at the IMDb listings earlier. I loved her.
She was great.
She was incredible in this movie. She had a way, and we talked about it a little off mic, and we shouldn't have, but
we probably shouldn't have.
She had a way of...
she was very, very subtle in the way she approached things.
And then she laid it on hard when she needed to, and it just... The confidence in her facial expressions, and then the looks of terror that she gives later when she knows she's in trouble.
Traps her.
Yes. Oh, she goes from one end of the spectrum to the other.
She thinks she's in control, and she immediately realizes that she is not.
Yeah, that's one of my. I've really enjoyed that scene when she thinks she's the one.
Oh, with all the filing cabinets.
Yep, and she set a trap. Abra set a trap. So there's this. There's the little girl who's just realizing what's going on, and she's setting this trap for this experienced hunter. Basically,
she's fortifying her mind.
Yeah, it was so cool. And it's such a cool scene. If you haven't seen it, it's absolutely worth watching just for those interactions alone.
Right.
But, you get deeper into the story, and you have Danny trying to redeem himself and making friends with this other girl who has the Shining. And it culminates with them going back to the hotel.
Right.
Because that's where Danny knows he can form an advantage, basically.
Well, he's going to use the hotel for his benefit.
Let's back up a little bit before we get to that. The hotel no longer has these monsters in it because he has been taught how to put them in a box in his mind.
Right.
And he's basically hunted them.
And trapped them.
And trapped them in all these boxes. Which is such a cool,
theory.
Well, it's not just a theory. It's obviously a metaphor. People do that themselves with their own demons.
Compartmentalize?
That aren't really demons. They're, they're your own personal issues.
Right.
And you
lock them in your box.
Which isn't always the best thing to do.
No, it's not healthy.
But in this situation, when it's an actual monster, it's the right thing to do. So the movie culminates in this big event that happens at the hotel. They did a good job matching the mom from the original.
They did.
I don't think they did a very good job matching.
So you know who that is? Did you see who it was?
I don't, but...
It's Elliot from E.T.
Elliot from E.T.
Who was in Haunting.
Yeah, I know. He was the Jack Nicholson stand-in?
Yes.
I don't think he was very good.
Lloyd the bartender.
Okay, Lloyd the bartender. I don't think he was very good.
That's him, right? Henry Thomas?
I'm looking. Henry Thomas. I don't even see what you're looking at here. Where? I don't think he matched up very well. The performance was good. Yes, that's him.
Okay, they did some CGI on him.
Yeah, the performance was good, but I don't think it was a very good... And maybe it wasn't supposed to be an exact match. But
well, you weren't going to get Jack
Nicholson?
Jack Nicholson to go in and do that.
No. He's
done.
90?
He's retired, man.
Yeah, but...
so retired.
But seeing Danny with the axe... And
that was fun.
Him
looking through the door.
Yep, him looking through the door. There's some really cool moments in this movie that really, from beginning to end, has you hooked on it, whether you remember The Shining or not. But now it made me want to go back and watch The Shining again.
I feel when I watched The Shining, it didn't feel like it had resolved. Like, I didn't feel the story resolved or ended.
No.
Which makes sense because it obviously continues.
Yeah. Yeah, it made me want to... Man, I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan. I've read a handful of books. I've read The Stand, I've read Thinner, I read Rose Madder.
He seems like a cool guy, but I haven't ever like picked up his books and be like, I have to read all his books.
I remember liking Insomnia. But I've never really got deep into him.
You didn't get the bug?
No, same thing with what's the guy that wrote Fight Club? Chuck Palahniuk.
Sure.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
You read a couple of his books.
Yeah, I read a handful of his books, and I didn't really like them all that much. And when somebody
was just a style of writing.
I don't know. It's
content. I think the
only Palahniuk book that I liked was Choke.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, because I read Fight Club, I read Choke, I read I can't remember the name of the other two, but when somebody swears by an author and I trust that person's judgment, I try to give it a chance, and 4 books is a chance.
Yes.
So
that is more than a chance.
Yeah, I like some Stephen King movies, but I never really got into his books all that much. But this movie I did like from beginning to end. I feel like if you've seen The Shining and you remember it, that it'll add some stuff for you. But even not remembering it entirely and just remembering some of more of the
you didn't have to watch The Shining to follow along with what was going on.
I think you'd get more out of it.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it a lot. But I, like you said earlier, I enjoy Ewan McGregor. I like the people in it. I really liked the hunters in this. The villains were great. The
Crow.
The Crow. Oh, yeah. He was good.
He was good.
He was really good. He was basically the tracker. Well, she kind of got a general idea, and he
went to the location.
Yes. He would pick up the people. There were some hard things to watch. I didn't like seeing a 10, 11-year-old baseball player get brutally murdered. That was pretty rough.
Buried in a shallow grave.
And
that was
watching these.
Yeah, Jacob Tremblay.
Who's Jacob Tremblay?
He was in Room.
I've never seen it.
Which you should never watch.
That's what you've told me.
And he was in Good Boys.
Okay.
He was the shortest one.
Okay, gotcha. But I really enjoyed this movie, and it was a hell of a way to kick off our, well, I guess Freaky. We talked about that last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
That kind of kicked off our horror Halloween
viewing.
And what else did we watch besides Class Action Park? We just watched something recently. Didn't we watch something after Dr. Sleep? No?
We probably did, and I can't remember.
I thought we did. Oh, I started watching American Pickle, which we need to finish before we talk about it.
I need to restart it.
I have a lot of things to say about that. But no, it was a really good way to jump off our Halloween-y movies. If you have any recommendations for us to watch, there's a new kind of throwback to Scream. I know what you did last summer coming out on Netflix on October 6th. It looks semi-entertaining. I want to watch Don't Breathe.
Okay.
Because there's another one coming out, and everybody swears by that. And there's a handful of movies we have on there. But one of the other things we watched since our last episode was Class Action Park.
So weird.
Which has to do with the New Jersey theme park called Action Park.
Yes. It was called Action Park, but it wasn't a true theme park because I think you have to actually have permits and shit for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. This was also kind of, and they leaned into it. Chris Gethard, the comedian, was in it because he had gone there, and it kind of leans into the fact that the people that went there are slightly older than us, but not by much.
Maybe
5 years at the most.
Okay.
Because this was in the 80s to early 90s.
Right.
And
when they were in high school.
Yes, but this is when we were growing up, and we're part of this generation, which is
the MTV generation.
The last generation. We're old millennials, technically. Whether we identify with it or not, we are.
Okay.
But we are the last generation that got to go outside, run around, say, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, I'll be home when the sun goes down." And
I never got to do that personally.
I understand, but our generation. Yeah, nobody watched you at all, so
there's points.
That's different.
Watching a house,
and I was in a similar boat where nobody watched me, but I was allowed to do whatever I want. So I went everywhere, and whether that's because parents weren't watching you, or in my case, my mom was on meth. Our generation, minus you, that's what we do. We got to go out. We got to just say, "See you later, mom. See you later, dad," or whatever, and just go out. So. as much as this was about a theme park, it was also about that generation being the last generation that just got to go out and fuck around.
Well, because no parent would probably let their child go there.
Oh,
if they knew
no.
what was going on there.
Especially not now. Well, with social media and Yelp, you would know instantaneously that the place was terrible. But this place was built by a guy who had an investor who would get rides, mock-ups of rides made from people who shouldn't have, couldn't get a ride anywhere else.
Engineers don't know how to build things.
If you've seen the water slide with the loop-de-loop in it,
it is so crude.
That was there, and there's a scene in the movie where it's a documentary where they're talking about
what the
people kept getting cut. People kept getting, and they couldn't figure out where. Well, people had dislodged teeth, and the teeth had lodged into the slide, and it was cutting people.
So if people weren't heavy enough to lay against the outside of the tube when they went through the loop, their face would smash into the top part of the tube.
Yeah,
and people would lose teeth, and the teeth would get embedded in the structure of the loop. So then when somebody else wasn't heavy enough to stay on the outside, they would crash into these teeth.
So it was a documentary about this wild theme park at this wild times, and it was just fucking, people died there. They died there.
I thought it was crazy when they were talking about what they would spray on people for like injuries.
Yeah. They would just burn your skin.
Yeah. And it would turn orange.
Yeah. You had to stay in this like circle, and they would spray you down with this chemical. And if you could stay in the circle, did you get like free tickets or something?
Something like that.
But they only had like 2 people ever that had been able to stay in.
Because it hurt so bad. Like, it's crazy.
But when you watch these rides, they're so fucking crazy. Like, you would have to be out of your goddamn mind.
Or high or drunk.
And they said, they had teenagers running these rides. People that had no idea what they were doing. There was electrical that wasn't grounded. There was all kinds of crazy ass shit.
And just think about all the times that MTV was there filming stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh hey, we're all hanging out down here.
I mean,
come on down.
It was so wild. It is absolutely worth watching. It's I saw something somewhere that said that Netflix or all these streaming services should have a category called Tight 90. It's a movie that's an hour and 30 minutes or less. So when you're surfing through stuff and you
only have so much time,
you're like, I don't want to start a 3-hour movie or 2.5 hours or that you can go to a category that has 90-minute or less movies. This falls into that category. It's right around an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes.
It's a short watch.
It's a short watch. It's extremely entertaining. If you want to see some weird, fucked up rides that should have never been made, it's absolutely worth it.
I swear to God, when we were watching it, I almost started to think it was a mockumentary.
Yeah,
because
I did too.
I was like, how can this be real? Like, how could this actually happen?
We looked. We're not sounding stupid right now. It was real.
It was totally real. And it was legit. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, who would do that?
Well, I mean, it all had to do with the fact that they thought that was going to be an up-and-coming part of the country. Like, that would be that coast's Disneyland. You know what I mean?
With water.
Well, that's what it sounded like. Well, it wasn't all water, though. It wasn't all water.
Oh, yeah, because they had the road one. Yeah. They had the different
freeway
sections.
Ran through the middle of the theme park.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
So weird.
Like, it could never happen today.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, the fact that people would sue and they would just take them to trial.
Right.
They would just go. And then if they won, they said it in the documentary, if they won, they would just never pay. I can't believe it.
Oh my God. It's so crazy.
And the park, I mean, it looks like the park's open now under new management who's trying to do it safely, but it's fucking crazy.
No, thank you. I will not be going there.
Yeah, hard pass. But I mean, I don't want to spoil too much of it because it was entertaining. It was
hilarious.
It was.
Sadly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because you feel awful that you're laughing at this like crazy.
I mean, and it's lighthearted, but it isn't because people died, and it does have to do with one of the kids that died there. I mean, literally, he got launched into a rock.
Yeah.
And died. So I mean, it's not all funny, lighthearted, but it is an absolutely great watch. I mean, I really enjoyed. I mean, it hooks you in right away.
Oh, for sure.
You're like, how?
Wait, how?
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole movie. If you want to watch a movie,
how is that a ride?
Yeah. If you want to just watch, wait, what? There was one that was just, it was you cliff dove, and as you would cliff dive, people would just fucking make fun of you. They said the whole time.
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely was a product of the time period. But yeah, Class Action Park. I think it was on
It's on HBO.
HBO Max, yeah. HBO Max is solid.
The content? Yes. Yeah. The app? No, not so much.
Yeah, the app on Roku does not work very well.
It has something to be desired for sure.
Yeah, but the last episode we had, I did not like White Lotus.
No.
So to come back and have, as people that are extremely busy, we said we were going to start taking breaks during Little League season because we have 2 kids in. Well, now we have 1 kid in 2 different versions of baseball and 1 in soccer, and we're busier now than we were, but we're trying to get on here to make sure we record. And typically we're going to like the things that we watch because we don't want to waste our time.
Right.
And I felt like White Lotus was a waste of my time.
Oh, I totally do too. And that was disappointing.
Yeah. But to come back and watch Dr. Sleep, which I thought was incredible, and Class Action Park, which isn't going to win any Oscars, but I mean,
no,
it was definitely an entertaining watch. I would gladly recommend both of these
to anybody.
And if you haven't started it's the middle of September now.
We had to start early because we know we're not going to get too many opportunities.
Yes.
That's our thing.
That's like
our problem.
I think instead of starting October 1st, we're going to start September 1st from now on. But it gives us the opportunity to watch more stuff. And I mean, if you haven't started yours, Dr. Sleep is a definitely good way to kick off your Halloween stuff.
Viewing,
yeah. Next week, I absolutely want to talk about American Pickle because it is one of the most bizarre movies you'll ever watch. And I hadn't finished it. I only had like 10 minutes left. And I look over and Katrina's asleep. So we have to go back like 30 minutes and rewatch some of it.
Sorry.
And then it'll be back to, I only put that in because it was under an hour and 30 minutes. And
I couldn't make it.
Yeah, and she couldn't make it. So, but no, we have some good scary movies to watch this year. I'm excited.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm excited. I saw some stuff recommended on online, so
the less I have to choose, the better.
Yeah, so. I know. Everybody knows, everybody's done it. You're surfing through, you're going through, and
it's content
and then
overload.
You realize that 30 minutes have gone by, and you're
still haven't chosen
anything.
Yeah.
So no, we'll be back next week, and we'll probably be back with some. Oh, you know what? We're on vacation next week.
Yay!
So it'll be 2 weeks. So we will. I'm not going to try to force one in and be miserable because we tried to force square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so we're going to be gone for 1 week, but we'll be back and we will have some more scary movies to talk about because I've put some stuff aside that I want to watch.
Cool.
So we don't have to look.
Yay.
And we will be back and let us know what you think on social media of that whole niche. You've seen a movie but you can't remember it. Idea. I'd like to see what people.
We can't be the only people.
Yeah, we can't be the only people that either have had that happen to us or have thought about it enough to do a podcast on it. But I'd like to do it, and
all of our infinite time that's available to us.
Yeah. What show were we watching? I want to do a Ted Lasso finale as well when that comes out because that's got a few weeks left, and I could just do an hour of just
Ted
certain
Lasso
characters on Ted Lasso, but. No, that'll be it for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we appreciate you all listening. So
thank you.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.